Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, if you didn't like critical race theory in your corporate training, if you didn't like critical race theory in your kids' schools, this is critical race theory with a gun and a badge and the power to arrest. And if my colleagues on the left are so worried about domestic terrorism, maybe they ought to be establishing new authorities at the FBI and DOJ to look into the BLM riots of 2020. Maybe they ought to have new authorities to go after Antifa and leftist agitators. But no. It's about white supremacy today. My concern is increasingly about the terrorists who are in our country who are crossing the border illegally. I was just in Yuma, Arizona with my colleague, Mr. Biggs, and we were briefed by Customs and Border Patrol about the known terrorists who are crossing our border each and every week, each and every month. And the majority here is more concerned about chasing the ghosts of white supremacy than dealing with those real and actual threats. The Attorney General in the United States came to this committee, misled us about the authorities that were being used to target American parents, and instead of giving the Attorney General an invitation to come back and explain himself, clarify, give us comfort that that's not occurring, we're giving the Department of Justice more authorities to continue the corrupt work that we see that they've already been engaged in. This bill grows government. It gives more authorities to a corrupt, weaponized, politicized Department of Justice and FBI, and it gaslights the targeting of white people. This is particularly problematic in our military. I would note that this legislation has a grave and negative impact on every single American wearing the uniform right now in our military. It has them all concerned that if they liked the wrong meme, shared the wrong joke 7 years ago, that their career could be ruined, that their patriotism could be tarnished. I get these concerns from my district, most frequently from the units that are minority units. Because in our military, we try to train everyone to believe that you go through the same systems. You develop the same sense of common purpose. And now when we sick the FBI on the DOD and on our military to try to smear them as domestic terrorists or white supremacists, it erodes unit cohesion. It negatively impacts readiness. I have noticed that the parliamentarian referred this legislation not only to our committee, but to the Armed Services Committee as well. And I would implore the leadership of the Armed Services Committee, do not grant this bill a waiver. It has a significant impact on the readiness of our fighting force. And if this bill is not favorably referred out of the Armed Services Committee, it should not go to the floor. It must be given hearings there to see its full and damaging effect. Increasingly, the left wants to use federal law enforcement to target Americans. We saw that in the Russia hoax. We see that in the ongoing FISA abuses that the committee will not bring forward. We saw it with the targeting of parents who attended school board meetings, and now they're drawing a bead on our military. I thought about amending this bill to include requirements that BLM and Antifa and leftist agitators also be analyzed, but honestly, I'm not going to offer that amendment because I sincerely believe that the gravest threat to our country is the inward turning of exquisite national security authorities that we intended for terrorists in faraway lands against our own people. And my friends, now you are in power, and so you are trying to weaponize these institutions against those who you consider to be antithetical to your worldview. But keep in mind, that may sound good today when the FBI and DOJ are left-leaning, but they used to be right-leaning. The FBI used to essentially be a white supremacist institution. They targeted Martin Luther King Jr. They targeted Marcus Garvey. They targeted Malcolm X with some of these very authorities. And so I would just caution you against giving the power to an entity to ruin lives and to weaponize the apparatus of government with concepts that we never intended to be used on our soil. And if we do that, I think we'll have a more just system for everyone. We categorically reject white supremacy. It has no role in our country and our lives. But it's almost like we're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when we go accuse every American of being a white supremacist, I think then we lose the ability to accurately target the acts of violence that you've correctly identified and that our existing laws could deal with. I yield back.